Hey friends, this is DJT and welcome back to the next episode of Speak On It. Today we're talking about personal branding. And when I bring up that topic, people have different reactions to that because they typically think of a brand as a product and they don't feel like people should have a brand. But the reality is that you do, and it can be by design or by default. And so if you're anything like me, you want to have some control over what that brand is. And the reality is that your brand is not what you think about yourself. It's not your perception of self. It's actually just the opposite. It's what other people think about you. And as a matter of fact, it's what they say about you when you're not in the room. But you do have some control over that. And I want to talk to you about how you do that by sharing some of the fundamentals of actually building a strong brand. So personal branding is more than having a domain name or a logo or pretty pictures online. It's actually very strategic. And if you do it right, it can make the difference in your career. It can make the difference between you achieving your personal and professional goals or not. And so if you're serious about building a strong brand, I want you to commit to not posting another thing on social media until you hear the 3 suggestions that I have for you and actually go through some of the activities that I want to share. The first thing that I want you to do is to take some inventory. Take a self-assessment. Who are you? Who do you want to be? What are your skills? What are your talents? What are you passionate about? What do people say about you? How do you make people feel? Right? A lot of times people are not very reflective around who they are and what they bring to the table, but it takes some reflection and some work for you to actually sit down and understand your current state before you start to build out a plan. And so I want you to spend some time actually crafting that out. Answer those questions. What is it that you do that is better than anybody else? When you think about your friends calling you all the time, there's got to be some trends. What do they call you for most often? Maybe it's to review a resume, maybe it's for career advice, maybe it's, who knows what it is. But think about what are those trends that you're seeing within your space. So as part of this self-assessment, I'd like to do an activity and suggest this activity for others to do. I want you to think of 10 people within your network. I want you to exclude your family actually, because they know you in a different way. But think of 10 people, some people that maybe you work with, a former manager, colleagues, peers in the space, a diverse group of people, and ask them a couple of questions. I want you to ask them, what are 3 to 5 words that describe you, that describe your leadership style, or that describe your brand? Ask them what they think you stand for, and I guarantee you the feedback is going to be so telling in terms of where you are today. And so you have to know where you are today before you start to craft a personal brand strategy. So the second thing that you want to do before you start to build strategies is to understand and dream of your desired brand. What is it that you want people to say about you? What do you want people to perceive about you? How do you want people to feel when they're around you? And if you read up on this, people will ask you to think about your funeral and what you want people to say when they're at your funeral. And I don't even think you have to go that far. Just think about the moment that you get ready to transition to a new job. You'll probably have some cake or dinner with your peers and colleagues, and they may toast you and talk about you before you leave. What do you want them to say? How will they have felt by being in your presence? That'll give you a good sense, right, of where you want your brand to be. So it could be at the end of this current job, it could be at your funeral. What do you want your impact to be on the world? That's the second assignment. Understand that. If there are some big goals baked in there, know what that is as well, because that will help you craft a better strategy to hitting that goal. So you've taken your self-assessment, you've decided what your desired brand is going to be. Now, if those are aligned, you're good. You just have to be consistent and persistent around some of the strategies to continue to maintain that brand. But if there's a gap there, if what your desired brand is different than what it is today, then you have a little bit more work to do. And so before you jump into that work, I want you to think about this third point, and that's who is your target audience. You can't be all things to all people, right? And so you have to be very specific about who you are trying to influence and who you want to be within your network that will allow you to get to the goals that you want. And when you know your target audience, it actually drives some of the strategies that you will use, especially around social media. You can't get around social media when you're talking about personal branding. And so if your target audience is over 35, then you may want to start to build that profile on a LinkedIn, because that's the majority of the demographic there. However, if your demographic is somewhere between 18 and 29, you might want to spend that time building out a strategy, a personal brand strategy on Instagram or another platform. And so knowing who your target is going to be really important. And when you're thinking about that audience, outside of just demographics, you want to understand function and feeling, right? Functionally, what does this audience need? What problem do they have that you can solve for them? And then how do they want to feel? And you've heard me say feeling a couple of times, and it's so much about that. Personal branding is not just about expertise and substance, it's also about a feeling, and we often forget that. And so how does this audience want you to make them feel? And I'll give you an example. I have to buy toiletries every month. Toilet paper, deodorant, toothpaste, all of that. I can go to Target, I can go to Walmart, I can go to Myers. There's a lot of places I can go, but where I choose to go actually depends on that feeling. They all sell the same thing. Actually, some of them are more expensive than others, but I choose personally to go to Target because it evokes a feeling that is aligned with how I want to feel when I'm out shopping that some of the other stores may not. So the last thing that I'll say about personal branding is that it's not about pretending or being someone who you're not. It's really about intentionality. There is a quote that I heard somewhere that says you can't hit a target that you can't see. And so you want to be very intentional. And if done right, it'll help you craft lots of decisions. It'll make you make decisions differently about the next job you take, or what organizations that you want to join, or even what things you want to post on social media. You want to make sure and be reminded that everything that you're doing, all activity, is aligned to the brand that you desire. And so with that, thank you for watching again this week, and I will see you all next Sunday at 6.